Saying critical math education has different concerns. They are concerned about the political role of mathematics education. Maybe one could talk about the political roles of mathematics education. As other concern is the social function or the social functions of mathematics. There's a concern about dialogue, and they are concerned about learning environments. There are many more concerns, but these are the concerns I'm going to concentrate on today. I want also to show a picture of Paulo Freire, just that we see some sources of this inspiration for the formulation of critical math education. The first concern, that was the political role of mathematics education. And I want to refer to two important texts. The one is the Pedagogía do Oprimido from 1968 by Paulo Freire. The text was translated into English in 1972 and into Danish. I read it in Danish. It was translated in 1973. So at that time, Paulo Freire got famous in very many countries around the world. The other text I want to refer to, that's Erziehung nach Auschwitz, Education After Auschwitz. It's a short paper and short article by Theodor Adorno from Germany. It was, I think it started as a radio lecture, radio presentation, and then it was circulated and made part of a book a little bit later. But it was presented the first time in 1966. And the first line, it's not any fantastic big discussion, but the first line is unique. And Adorno say, the first demand for any education is to make sure that Auschwitz does not happen again. And he meant it in two ways. He meant it literally. Education has to face oppressive forces. It has to make sure that no Auschwitz is happening again. It was also to be understood metaphorically, as education has to face any kind of possible atrocities. The principal idea of both Freire and Adorno is that education has a political role to play. They are the two first I know about, which really put this in a big emphasis. There might have been before, but from a clearly political point of view, Paulo Freire, Adorno, and others at the same time, but particularly Paulo Freire and Adorno, emphasized this. Education has to confront any form of oppressions and atrocities. Education must work for social justice. It is not exactly their words, but this is the more recent interpretation of this whole move. And this idea is a departure for critical education in general. It is also a departure for critical mathematics education. And critical mathematics education has got many formulations. I started my PhD in 1977 trying to formulate a critical math education initiative. Merlin Frankenstein published a very important article, Critical Mathematics Education in Application of Paulo Freire's Epistemology. She published this in '83. This is the introduction in the English-speaking countries of critical math education and an introduction in critical math education of the inspiration from Paulo Freire. Erik Gutstein wrote a book, Reading and Writing the World with Mathematics, towards a pedagogy for social justice. And the title of the book is directly referred to Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire talked about reading the word and reading the world, reading the palabra, reading o mundo. And Gutstein worked for a pedagogy for social justice. It should be a math education for social justice. And let me refer to one of my books. It's not the first in the topic, but it's one of them, An Invitation to Critical Math Education, where I try to show what could be done in the perspective of critical math education. In 1920, last year, I published a paper which told about 3 narratives about math education. And I presented the first one, which claims that the mathematics is a wonderful subject, which provides a true foundation for human progress. This is somehow a very common discourse, celebrating math education. Mathematics education is a good thing, it's an important thing, and students need to learn mathematics. It is a broad, common sense interpretation of math education. It is a foundation for human progress. It's a foundation for the individual to join society. It is a foundation for many good things. It is foundation for technological progress and for economic progress. This is the first narrative. The second narrative presents mathematics education as a suspicious subject, that mathematics education as such serves functions of oppression. It is a recommendation of students' way of behaving. It's a recommendation of their way of thinking. It's an education, when it's applied in a traditional form, with many exercises. And in general, a student, when he leaves secondary school, would have solved 10,000 exercises. What did these exercises do? Did they help the student to learn mathematics? One could doubt it. But one can be sure they exercise the students to follow rules and to follow predefined prescriptions. This is maybe a function of math education. Then there is the third narratives, which highlight that mathematics has the critical potentials and might serve for development of social justice. This is the narrative which Marion Frankenstein associated to. This is the narrative that Erik Gutstein associated to. This is the narrative that I'm associated to, and it is the narrative which is somehow embraced by critical math education. For sure, critical math education is not forgetting the second narrative. Mathematics education might serve very problematic functions in society. It might be an instrument of controlling and oppression. But this considered, it is still an aspiration and hope that math education could serve also the development of social justice. Okay. Let me now move to the social function of mathematics. The first observation, now I'm talking about mathematics, and it could well be advanced mathematics, and I have in mind engineering mathematics and mathematics of these dimensions. Such mathematics-based actions can be found in economic transactions and business management. Any kind of economic transactions now is based on mathematical algorithms. Production process. Just look at the production of cell phones, of cars, of plastic things, of shoes. Many processes are half automatized. Any automation of a production process is based on algorithms. Algorithms formulated, executed in terms of mathematics. Engineering constructions. One cannot think of any complex construction, an airplane in a car, without a huge amount of mathematics brought in action. I can refer to medical and war technology. Medical technology now is mathematics-based. The treatment of cancer, the radiotherapy, it's based on mathematics. Mathematical algorithms guide the procedures, the algorithms which make the process moving. You move into a scanning machine guided by mathematics. Medicine is deeply formed nowadays through mathematical structures. War technology also. One cannot now do any sending a missile without coding theory, without cryptography, without much mathematics brought in actions. But the mathematics make part of war technology was known previously. The biggest indication is the throwing of the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb is a physical construction, certainly also a mathematical construction. Any kind of surveilling systems based on mathematics. Modern information processing is based on mathematics. My talk now is based on mathematics. On mathematics, algorithms brought in action. Let me show this picture of Ambrosion, who passed away in May this year. A very sad loss to math education. There are many observations we get from him, and I'm going to point out one important information or one important observation. It's an observation Ambrosion made with respect to wonders and horrors. He stated this in the publication from 1994. He states, in the last 100 years, we have seen enormous advances in our knowledge of nature and in the development of new technologies. And yet, this same century has shown us a despicable human behavior, unprecedented means of mass destruction, of insecurity, new terrible diseases, unjustified famine, drug abuse, and moral decay are matched only by an irreversible destruction of the environment. This is for sure a paradox. Much of this paradox has to do with an absence of reflections and considerations of values in academics. particularly in the scientific disciplines, both in research and in education. Most of the means to achieve these wonders and also these horrors of science and technology have to do with advances in mathematics. This is an extremely important observation to have in mind. Mathematics is powerful. By means of mathematics, one can produce many wonders. And by means of mathematics, one also produces many horrors. Mathematics is powerful. It could be wonderful. It could be horrible. This is an observation with respect to mathematics which we cannot ignore. It is an important aspect of mathematics. And this I point out in the following way. Mathematics-based actions, wherever we find mathematics brought in actions, these actions can have any kind of qualities. Mathematics-based action can be cynical, expensive, benevolent, interesting, risky, disastrous, aggressive, generous, creative, innocent, harmless, wonderful, horrible, and you might be able to continue for a while. They could have any kind of qualities, just like any kind of action could have any kind of qualities. So many qualities actions could have, and qualities I not see need to be good qualities. It could be qualities. It's just properties. And it is important to be aware that mathematics-based actions do not have any particular attractive quality due to the fact that they are based on mathematics. They could have any kind of qualities. It is important to be aware that when I talk about mathematics, one can think of all kinds of mathematics, because any kind of mathematics can be brought in action. Pure mathematics, what was thought of as pure mathematics, pure number theory, in the 50s and 40s and previously, pure number theory was an example of really pure mathematics. But this is brought in actions in war technology in terms of advanced systems of cryptography. Applied mathematics can be brought. Engineering mathematics, school mathematics are also brought in action. Street mathematics in any version of ethnomathematics are brought in actions. And we need to remember, any kind of mathematics brought in action can have any kind of qualities. And we have to remember, these apply to whatever kind of mathematics we have in mind. Any version of mathematics can be horrible, wonderful, cynical, etc., etc. Mathematics brought in actions need reflections. This is important, and this is a big message and a big reminder to critical math education. It is an education where any kind of mathematics brought in actions need to be reflected upon. Let me just bring one example. It's an example put forward by Richard Barwell. He published a thesis which has the title, The Mathematical Formatting of Climate Change, Critical Mathematics Education in Post-Normal Science. But look at the title. What is this? The Mathematical Formatting of Climate Change. It sounds strange, if not contradictory. How could mathematics format climate change? but this is his point in the following sense. Mathematics formats how we interact with climate change. It makes us see climate change, make us interpret climate change in particular ways. And by interpreting climate change, it forms the way we are interacting or acting as responses, as consequences of climate change. In Paulo and Richard Barwell's words, mathematics also formats how we interact with the climate. Through the mathematized, model-based perspective prevalent in climate research, the climate is constructed in particular ways, as, for example, measurable, predictable, technical, and controllable by humans, rather like a temperature in a high-tech sensor-controlled greenhouse. Mathematics make an interpretation of climate change and make us act in particular ways. Maybe it's good ways, maybe it's relevant ways, but every mathematics-based interpretation could be a misinterpretation. Any mathematics-based ways of acting could be a problematic acting, it could be a misacting or counterfactual acting. Mathematics formats many things. By means of mathematics, we format how we interact with, how we interpret, and how we interact with economic transactions, business management, production processes, how we rationalize or how companies rationalize production process, fire people, include more technology, engineering constructions, medicine, war technology, surveillance system, pandemics, climate changes. Mathematics interacts, formats how we interact, response to climate change and pandemics as an example. Acknowledging that mathematics is not any innocent and harmless business, but a powerful one. Critical math education does not engage in any automatic celebration of mathematics in all its applications. It acknowledges that mathematics might bring about wonders as well as horrors. This is critical mathematics position with respect to mathematics. Now, let me say something about dialogue. And I start by making comments about the notion of critique. It has a long development in philosophy. I want to refer to Kritik der reinen Vernunft, Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant from 1781. Here he tried to elaborate an epistemic critique, and with this work he introduced critique as a crucial concept in philosophy. I want to refer to Das Kapital, Kritik der politischen Ökonomie, The Capital, Critique of the Political Economy by Karl Marx. It came in 3 volumes, the first one in 1867. Marx also made a critique, but this was a different kind of critique. It was not just a critique of theory. It was not just a critique of economic theories. It was also a critique of the very economic structures themselves. It was not just an epistemic critique, it was also a political critique. Let me refer to critical theory as initially formulated by Horkheimer, Marcuse, and Adorno. They broadened up the notion of critique to concern many more things than Marx has applied critique to. They applied it not only to economic structures, but also to everyday structures, cultural appearances, artwork, and so to music, for instance. There are works by Foucault. It is a big critical enterprise. In some way, Foucault combines the critique from Kant and the critique from Marx. He is sometimes referred to as the new Kant, and it's with good reasons, because he also made a critique, epistemological critique, by showing how our ideas, our categories are formed by historical processes, and how the categories of science might include many preconceptions. The three, or these critical approaches, are different, but they share one similarity. They do not pay attention to the notion of critique. I must say, within critical theory, there is an exception with Jürgen Habermas, because he was interested in communicative acts and dialogue. But the rest, the critical project was somehow developed without relations to the notions of critique. But to me, to critical math education, it is important to recognize the intimate relationship between dialogic interactions and critical activities. I see critical activities as based on dialogue. And here is a principal inspiration coming from Paulo Freire. As far as I know, as far as I can see, he is the first in the long tradition of critical approaches, the critical project that highlighted the relationship between dialogue and critique. In this sense, Freire makes an original contribution to the whole critical project, including Kant, Marx, critical theory, and many, many others. Let me now move on to learning environments, because just having in mind that critique is important, though dialogue is important for established critical activities. And if critical activities should take place in the classroom, then the classroom cannot be organized as teacher presentations. It cannot be a banking education as formulated by Paulo Freire. It needs to be something different. I have talked about landscapes and investigations. And by these, I refer to learning environments that provide possibilities for dialogue in explorative interaction, and therefore for raising critical, stimulating critical reflections. Landscapes of investigation may provide resources for critical activities. And critical activities can include critique of mathematics. As I indicated, it's important to critique mathematics and any way of bringing mathematics in action. It can also be a critique by means of mathematics. And this I'm going to illustrate now. We look at this picture. It's an old picture. It could be from France. It could be 100 years ago. Two ladies are drinking coffee. Where does the coffee come from? Here is a picture. It could be from Brazil. The start of the coffee. Maybe the two ladies wanted coffee with sugar. Where does the sugar come from? Here we have the old picture of sugarcane farmers. the coffee has to be collected. Here we have Costa Rica coffee. The coffee had to be transported. There is railroads, construction of railroads. In Brazil, the construction was partly due to the need of transporting coffee from the countryside to the harbor and therefore making export. In the harbor, the coffee bags was piled. They were carried to the ships. And the situation in some way is the same today. There is a coffee plantations. Coffee has to be collected. Coffee has to be established, brought in bags, transported. And we can see production lines for coffee. You can see they start inside Berlin, now in Brazil, and abroad, and I make a big circle there in Europe or in Paris, where the coffee is being drinking. We are somehow witnessing production lines. Along these production lines, the start of coffee comes and it ends up in a cup of coffee in a coffee bar in could be Paris. Let us look at this picture here. It's today. They are drinking coffee. And we can say, where does the coffee come from? The production lines look the same. Where does the sugar come from? The production, the root looks the same. We can look more at the picture. There is a young man with a t-shirt. Where does the t-shirt come from? They are sitting with a table, may be made of wood. Where does the wood come from? We can look at every detail on the picture and ask, where did it come from? Production lines in a globalized world is something that is important to explore and consider. It is important to explore also for critical math education. Where do they start? Where do they end? How do the production lines look like for a pair of sports shoes, for instance? Here is an observation made in a graph. The prices in the shop, it's a little bit old graph, $50. And you can see where the lucre gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. The big lucre is in the last part. If you look at the salaries, in the shop and look at the salaries in the first step in the production, it's small salaries. We are witnessing an exponential growth. An exponential growth along this the production line. Whatever item we have to do with coffee, the production coffee, when the coffee is starting, there are farm workers. They have very low salaries, very little profit, and then the profit gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until the end. If you look at the sugarcane farmers, very little profit, get bigger and bigger and bigger along the production lines, biggest in the owners at the shop. If you look at the production of a t-shirt, of cotton, the farm workers very little, and so it is with any kind of production line. We are watching a tremendous expectation with respect to the t-shirt. Here is a reference. We discussed this production line situation. Yeah, this is something I want to highlight, that investigation by mathematics along the production lines about everything is a use of mathematics for making critical investigation of something. This is important just the whole topic of production lines tells that the old system of colonialism somehow fits nicely into the system of capitalism. If we look at the production lines or the resources line 200 years ago and today, they are not changing too much. The part of the world that gets explored is similar 200 years ago as colonies as today in the capitalist order of things. Let me finish by making some references to critical math education. There's coming out, or just come out, important book, Applying Critical Math Education, edited by Annika Andersson, Richard Barber. There are coming a book in Portuguese. There is a proceedings from the Math Education and Society Conference, edited by David Kolosche, with many, many examples. There is a book coming next year with many examples. And let me refer to some of my publications from this year and last year. Mathematics in Crisis. I have published A Philosophy of Critical Math Education. It's free available on the internet. I think the first also, Education Studies, is free available. Mathematics in Ethics, it's free available. Banality of Mathematical Expertise, I'm afraid this is not free available, and neither is the last Critical Math Education, which I put in the largest version of Encyclopedia of Mathematics. This was my presentation. Thank you very much.